Over the last few years, something remarkable has happened in the United States. Millions of people have moved to Florida. For some, it was about sunshine. For others, it was about taxes. For many people, it was simply the idea of a different lifestyle. Florida has consistently been one of the fastest growing states in the country. In some years, close to over 1,000 people per day have relocated here. But alongside that migration, something else has started happening. More and more people online have begun asking a very interesting question. Do people regret moving to Florida? And the answer to that question is actually much more complicated than you might think. Because while many people absolutely love living here, others are surprised by the reality. Insurance costs, condo assessments, hot summers, seasonal population changes, and the true cost of owning property in Florida. But at the same time, millions of people still choose to move here every year. So, what's really going on? Today we're going to go ahead and talk about that honestly, about why some people regret moving to Florida, what many people misunderstand about living here, and why despite all that Florida is still, and why it's so popular in America, most people move to Florida with a very clear picture in their mind. Beaches, palm trees, warm weather, relaxation. And often that image comes from vacation experiences. Maybe they visited for a week. Maybe they spent a winter here. Maybe they came down maybe a few times and thought, this feels like paradise. But living somewhere full-time is usually very different from visiting. When you live somewhere, you experience the full rhythm of everyday life. You experience the seasons. You experience the housing costs. You experience the infrastructure. You experience the schools, the traffic, the weather patterns, and the local economy. And this is where expectations and reality sometimes start to diverge. The Florida people experience on vacation is different than the Florida people experience when they actually live here year-round. Now, that doesn't mean Florida is bad. It simply means living here is more complex than people initially imagine. For example, during the winter months, Florida can feel incredibly vibrant. The weather is beautiful, restaurants are busy, seasonal residents, they all arrive. The energy is super high. But during the summer, the experience can shift. The heat becomes intense. The humidity rises. The seasonal population drops. Life slows down. And when someone moves here, expecting permanent vacation energy, that adjustment can take its toll. Understanding that difference between expecting vacation or not is very important in deciding whether or not Florida is the right place to live year-round. Yeah. Another thing that usually surprises newcomers is the cost stack. When they're looking at homes, they usually focus on the purchase price. They calculate the mortgage. They look at interest rates. They estimate what their monthly housing cost might be. But in Florida, the true cost of owning property often includes several additional layers. The mortgage is only one piece. And I'm sorry, but the insurance is high. Property tax, high. HOA or condo fees, usually high. Maintenance costs are high. And sometimes additional costs like flood insurance or storm preparation can be very high. When those costs stack together, the total monthly number can look very different from what someone initially expected. For example, someone might purchase a home believing their mortgage will represent most of the monthly expense. But in Florida, insurance and association costs can represent a surprisingly large portion of that total expense. This is one of the areas where Florida differs from maybe many other states. In places with lower storm exposure, it might be a small line item. Here it can become a major factor, but at the same time, Florida also offers financial advantages. There is no state income tax, and for some households, especially retirees or higher income earners, that can represent significant savings each year. So again, we see this idea of trade-offs. High insurance costs on one side, lower taxes, and a different lifestyle on the other. Yeah. One of the biggest financial surprises people usually encounter when they come to Florida is homeowners insurance. Most people understand that Florida is a hurricane-prone state. That part usually isn't the shock. The shock is often the actual numbers. In many parts of the country, homeowners insurance might cost $1,500 or $2,000 per year. In Florida, it is not unusual for that number to be much higher. Some homeowners pay $6,000 per year on a typical home, $7,000 per year, sometimes much more, depending on the property, obviously. And when people first see those quotes, the immediate reaction is often disbelief. But there are several factors behind these prices. Hurricane exposure is, yes, one of the biggest. Florida sits directly in the path of the Atlantic storm system. Another factor is reinsurance. Insurance companies purchase insurance themselves to protect against catastrophic losses. Because Florida represents concentrated storm risk, those global reinsurance markets heavily influence prices here. And then there are rebuilding costs. Construction materials have increased immensely. Labor costs have increased. And when rebuilding becomes more expensive, insurance coverage becomes more expensive as well. But Here is where comparisons become very important. Someone moving from a state with high income taxes might save thousands of dollars per year simply because Florida has no state income tax. So again, we see the theme of trade-offs. Higher insurance costs, but potential tax savings and lifestyle benefits. Another big discussion recently involves condominiums. For many years, condos were one of the most popular ways to live in Florida, at least initially. They offered lower maintenance. They were often near beaches or downtown areas, and associations handled many building responsibilities. But in recent years, the conversation around condos has changed. Much of that shift happened after the Surfside building collapse in 2021. We all know that. That tragedy triggered a major reassessment of structural safety requirements for condominium buildings across the state. New laws were passed requiring more detailed structural inspections and stronger reserve funding. The goal of these laws was basically safety, ensuring buildings are properly maintained and financially prepared for major repairs. But the financial impact has been significant for some condo owners. Many associations discovered that their reserve funds were not large enough to cover the necessary repairs at all. As a result, some buildings issued special assessments, big ones. In certain cases, those assessments reached tens of thousands of dollars per unit. That has made buyers much more cautious when evaluating condo purchases. People now look closely at association finances, building age, inspection reports, reserve funding. The Florida condo market is evolving. Buyers are becoming more informed. Another thing is cultural diversity. Florida is truly international crossroads. People here come from Latin America, from Caribbean, Canada, Europe, and from virtually everywhere, and definitely every region of the United States of America. In many areas, especially in South Florida, it is commonplace to hear multiple languages spoke in everyday life. Restaurants present cuisines from all over the world. Different traditions influence communities and neighborhoods. For many residents, this diversity is one of the most exciting parts of living here. It creates a dynamic environment. It introduces new ideas. It exposes people to different cultures. But for someone moving from a more culturally uniform place, the adjustment can take time. Suddenly you are surrounded by different languages, foods, traditions, perspectives, and people. For some people, that experience feels energizing. For others, it simply requires an adjustment, period. And again, this connects back to expectations. Florida is not just a warm climate. It is a place where many cultures intersect. The seasonal population cycle. During winter months, large numbers of seasonal residents arrive. These residents are often called the snowbirds. Many of them live here for several months each year before returning north during the summer. When this happens, population in many communities increases dramatically. Restaurants become busier, roads become more crowded, beaches fill up, reservations become harder to get. For someone who just moved to Florida, expecting a quiet coastal lifestyle, this change can be surprising. But the seasonal population increase also plays a major role in Florida's economy. Snowbirds spend money on restaurants, shopping, healthcare, recreation, housing. Many local businesses rely heavily on winter season revenue to sustain their operation for the rest of the year. So again, we see the Florida trade-off. Seasonal congestion on one side, economic activity on the other. Many longtime residents learn to adapt to this rhythm. Winter becomes the busy season. Summer becomes the quiet season. Interestingly enough, even though people sometimes complain about costs of crowds in Florida, and it continues to grow, hundreds of thousands of people relocate here every year. So why does that continue to happen then? The answer often comes down to comparison. Many people moving here are leaving states with higher taxes, long winters, or much housing costs that are crazy compared to here. Someone relocating from the Northeast might have been paying significant state income taxes. Florida has none. Someone relocating from maybe California might have faced housing prices maybe even far higher than parts of Florida. So people are often complaining about two different sets of trade-offs. Hot summers instead of cold winters. Higher insurance instead of higher taxes. Seasonal population swings instead of economic stagnation. And depending on someone's priorities, Florida can still be very attractive and continues to be. Another important factor is location. Florida is a very large state. From the Panhandle to the Keys, it spans more than 800 miles. And living in different parts of Florida can feel like living in completely different environments. South Florida, including Miami and Palm Beach, has an international atmosphere and fast-paced lifestyle. Central Florida, including Orlando, is influenced by tourism and large family communities. Southwest Florida, including Naples and Fort Myers, attracts many retirees and seasonal residents. North Florida, including Lake Jacksonville, has its own unique cultural character. Two people can live even in the same state and have completely different experiences, depending on where they live. Sometimes when someone says they regret moving to Florida, what they really mean is they ended up somewhere that didn't quite match their lifestyle preferences. Choosing the right community can make a huge difference. Big difference. Of course, Florida has many stereotypes. Some people think it's just beaches and retirement communities. Others imagine nonstop tourism, nightlife, but the reality is much more complex. Florida has large cities, growing industries, diverse neighborhoods, and many different lifestyles. Most residents live ordinary daily lives just like people anywhere else. They go to work, children go to school, families build routines around their communities. The beaches and attractions are still there, but they become part of the broader lifestyle rather than the entire experience. After looking at all of these factors, we return to the central question. Why do people still choose Florida? The answer comes back to lifestyle and opportunity. Florida offers year-round outdoor living, boating, fishing, golf, parks, sunshine. It also offers economic growth and a tax environment that attracts both businesses and industries and individuals. For many people, that combination is difficult to find elsewhere. When I think about it personally, I come back to a simple question. If someone left Florida, where would they go that truly offered a better balance of lifestyle, and opportunity, and environment? Every place has trade-offs, we know that. Florida simply has its own. And for many people, those trade-offs still make sense. No, Florida's not perfect, but no place is. And for the right person, it can still be an incredible place to live. The key is understanding both the positives and the challenges before making the move. If you enjoy honest discussions about the Florida housing market and what it's really like to live here, consider subscribing. And if you already live in Florida, I would love to hear your perspective. Do you love living here? Or has it been different than you expected? Please let me know in the comments.